Blog Talk Radio.
Bichamo Afuraitkaitnit AMANSEM da Medinde Ojirafo Kwesi Ranem Pta Akan Akwamumai Amaruka TV Mu Ojirafo Ojiramai Mu. Greetings to all Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit people, meaning Africans, black people. Today is AMANSEM Day, Affairs of the Nation Day. My name is Ojirafo Kwesi Ranem Pta Akan. Ojirafo, the Akwamu nation in North America within Ojiramai, the purified nation, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people in the Western Hemisphere. Yet I say we thank you once again for tuning into the broadcast. We open up the chat room. If you have any questions or comments that you would like to make in the chat room, you must log in as a user in order to interact. If you don't have a username, you can sign up for one quickly in Blog Talk. If you have any questions or comments on the phone line, simply hit the number 1 so that we can see that your hand is raised so that we can interact. We have 4 broadcasts on a weekly basis. We have Akanfo Nanasom, Ancient Authentic Akan Ancestral Religion, on Joda on Monday nights, where we deal specifically with the Akan expression of Nanasom, of ancestral religion. First and foremost, because we are Akan. Secondly, because of the misinformation being propagated regarding Akan, ancestral religion, culture, cosmology, the nature of the Obosom, the deities, the nature of the Nationism, and these various aspects of the tradition being misrepresented not only by individuals in the Western Hemisphere, but also from those individuals on the continent of Afuraikai, Africa, who have been infected with Christianity, Islam, white culture, white philosophy in general, and those infections have been woven into the fabric of their presentation of the culture. So we deal with ancient, authentic Akan ancestral religion, which deals with our ancestry reaching back to ancient Kanat, the Khan land, which is a title of ancient Nubia. We migrated from the Khan land, the Kanat Empire, to the western part of the continent. A couple of thousand years ago, reestablished the Kanat Empire after the fall of Kemet in northern Kanat. We established the Kana or Ghana Empire 1,000 years later because of invasion. Some of our people moved further south, reestablished ourselves in the regions of today's contemporary Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, and the Republic of Ghana, and reestablished Akan civilization in those regions, in the savanna and forest belt regions. Hundreds of years later, some of our people were taken from those regions and forced into North Central South America, the Caribbean, and Europe during the Musuo Kessie, the Great Perversity, the enslavement era. And this is how we ended up in the West. However, we maintained our ancestral religious traditions. So thus the Akan ancestral religion is called Winti in Suriname, South America. It's called Obia in Jamaica. It is called Hoodoo from the Akan term Undu in North America. Undu meaning medicine from roots, trees, plant life. It also means to become heavy with the spirit. It means that in the Hoodoo tradition in North America has those same definitions in the Akan language. Undu also has those exact same definitions in the language of ancient Kemet and Kanat, as we've proven in our book, Hoodoo People. We show the Medutu, the hieroglyphs showing that Undu means medicine from plant life and so forth, but it also means to become heavy, including become heavy with the spirit. There's also a term for the sacred ritual offerings given to the Obosom, the deities, and the Nationism and Samanfo, the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors. It is also a title of the people of Kanat in general. The Undu people or the Hoodoo people is a title of ancient Kanitu or Nubians. So we've been utilizing that title unbroken for thousands of years across continents. So this is what we deal with on Joda Monday nights. On Benada, Abinada Tuesday nights, we have Ojira, which means purification. We deal with ancestral religion in general, not just the Akan expression, but ancestral religion in general, no matter where we find ourselves in the world. Our people on the continent of Afuraikai practicing various expressions of Nanasom or Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, or African ancestral religion, and also our people here in the Western Hemisphere. When we were forced into the Western Hemisphere, we carried our ancestral religious practices in our blood circles, and thus we maintained ancestral religion intact for hundreds of years in this hemisphere. So when we talk about ancestral religion on the Ojira broadcast, it is purify concepts, purify understanding, purify knowledge of philosophy and culture and the nature of the deities and ancestral spirits and so forth, how it impacts every aspect of our lives, ancestral religion. In essence, it is defined, ancestral religion is defined as the ritual incorporation of divine law, the ritual restoration of divine balance. That means through ritual, we incorporate those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to incorporate in order to harmonize our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. And through ritual, we reject those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to reject in order to restore balance to our thoughts, intentions, and actions, and thus realign ourselves with divine order. So the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance, these are the expansive and contractive poles of ancestral religion. We state that Ojira purification operationalizes Nanasom. Purification operationalizes our practice of ritually incorporating divine law and ritually restoring divine balance so that we can execute our function in creation as given to us by the Great Mother and Great Father Supreme Being and maintaining our culture in the process. Ancestral religious culture for Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people is the divine acceptance, the divine law or love of order, and the divine hatred, the divine rejection of disorder and its purveyors. So we accept that which is harmonious and we reject that which is disharmonious that would otherwise create disorder within self and society. That is our culture. We seek to align every thought, intention, and action every moment of every day with divine order. When we make legitimate mistakes, we engage the ritual process to incorporate law and restore balance so that we can realign our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order and continue to execute our function. That is how ancestral religion impacts every aspect of our lives. So that's what we deal with on the Ojira broadcast, purifying concepts and texts, written text, orature, from ancient Kanit, Kemet, ancestral expressions in Afuraikai, Africa, as well as those ancestral religious traditions we maintained in our blood circles in the Western Hemisphere, such as the Hoodoo tradition, which is the Akan tradition in North America, Juju, which is the Yoruba tradition in North America, Voodoo, which is the Eve and Bone tradition in North America, Wanga, which is the Ovambo tradition in North America, Ngangai, which is the Fang tradition in North America, and so forth, Grigri, which is the Bambara tradition. We maintain these traditions intergenerationally and transcarnationally through successive reincarnations. Thus, we are not dependent on anyone outside of our direct spirit genetic blood circle for our ancestral religious practices. So that's what we deal with on Ojira, the Ojira broadcast. On Awukuda Akuda Wednesday nights, we have Egua Marketplace Day, where we showcase Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit businesses, organizations, and institutions, those who are serving the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit community in a positive capacity, those who maintain their ancestral religious values, which informs their service to the community. We showcase a number of businesses, and we will have more on institutions as well as organizations. We also talk about the philosophical foundation of our approach to economic development, which is rooted in our ancestral religious values, and we have published the Okom Economic Development Model, which details that approach, which is a holistic approach to economic development and so forth. So we deal with that on Egua, the Egua show, Marketplace show. Tonight is Yauda, which is Thursday. Also Yada, Abada. Thursday we have AMANSEM, Affairs of the Nation. So we deal specifically with issues that are confronting us as an Oman, as a nation, an Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit Oman nation, but specifically as Ojira Man, the purified Ojira Oman nation. Mine also means west, land of the setting sun. So Ojira Man means the purified nation of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people in the Western Hemisphere, the land of the setting sun. That is our designation for our people in the Western Hemisphere who are descendant of those ancestresses and ancestors who were forced into the Western Hemisphere. But when we were forced here, we maintained our traditions, were guided and empowered by our ancestral religious practices to wage war against the whites and their offspring, force the end of enslavement, and establish ourselves independently. Some of our people established independent settlements and nations during the enslavement process, freeing ourselves from enslavement, establishing our own independent sovereign spaces. Our people also established independent black towns after we forced the end of enslavement and so forth. So this is what we're talking about with regard to OBARIMA, the purified nation, Afurakani, Afurakani people in the Western Hemisphere. AMANSEM, talking about affairs of the nation. We recognize the AMANNE, the nation, as a living, breathing entity governed by specific Obosom forces in nature. We as cells within that organal structure, when we support the organal structure, the nation, which is governed by Obosom, and we align ourselves with those Obosom Orisha Vodou that govern this unique collection of entities, individuals, then we can engage in proper nation building. We deal with AMANNE, which is nationism, the purification of nationalism. It's the understanding of nationism, nation building rooted in our ancestral religious traditions, which is a full understanding of nation building. There's no real nationalism if it's a secular nationalism or a nationalism rooted in Eurocentric ideals or blackening up Eurocentric pseudo-religions like Christianity, Islam, Hebrewism, Judaism, and so forth, and trying to blacken up the fictional cartoon characters of those traditions and putting forward that philosophy as a grounding philosophy with regard to nation building, or utilizing secular nationalism, atheism, that kind of foolishness. Our approach to nation building is rooted in a proper definition of what a nation is. When we're drawn together in a certain region of the Earth Mother, in this region of the Earth Mother's body, we coalesce under the direction of our ancestresses and ancestors and blend ancestral blood circles. We take in the plant life, animal life, mineral life within this region of the Earth Mother's body through consumption for food and medicine, which transforms our cells. We interface with the Earth Mother divinities in this region of their body and take that energy within our spirit bodies and so forth. We interface with the unique expression of the Obosom, the Orisha, the Vodou, as they manifest in this region, the western region of the Earth Mother's body. That confluence of events and activities impacts us spiritually and physiologically, and therefore we form a locative identity which is unique, and our expression of ancestral religion and culture is unique. Our expression of nationism, the purification of nationalism, but AMANNE nationism, is unique as well. When we have issues that confront us, we approach them from a nationist perspective. So this is what we deal with on affairs of the nation, AMANSEM. Tonight we're going to deal with the female Obosom Tanenet, which is the Matron Obosom, the matron divinity of OBAATAN, Afuraitkaitnit Womanhood. So for those who are unaware, we have published our book, OBAATAN, Afuraitkaitnit Womanhood, back in August. This is the complementary publication to OBARIMA, Afurakani Manhood. We published OBARIMA, Afurakani Manhood back in 2008, and then a number of years later, we finally published the complementary text, OBAATAN, Afuraitkaitnit Womanhood. And we'll put a link to the direct link to the ebook version of the book in the chat room right now. Of course, you can get it on our page. Okay, so when you see in both books, OBARIMA and OBAATAN, the way they are structured, there are 7 sections, 7 chapters or 7 sections, based on the 7 principal values of manhood and womanhood. So each book has 7 sections. Each book has those 7 principal values of OBARIMA, Afurakani Manhood, OBAATAN, Afuraitkaitnit Womanhood. Those 7 principal values are expressions of the energy of the Obosom that govern the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies that govern the 7-day week. So each day of the week is animated by and governed by one of the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies, which are governed by specific Obosom with principal values reflects that energy complex. So every single day of the week, we align with the forces in nature that govern that day of the week and the principal value that emanates from that energetic expression, allows us to align ourselves, our thoughts, intentions, and actions, our activities with those forces in nature that govern that day. So we therefore, every day of the week, have an opportunity and a focus, no matter where we are in the world as Afurakani people, to align on the same program, operating in harmony with one another wherever we exist. These are manuals of manhood and womanhood, foundational manuals. We've had really over 100,000 by now downloads of the free ebook version of OBARIMA, Afurakani Manhood. That is a text that has transformed the lives of young as well as older Afurakani men, adults, and so forth, whether they were just trying to study some information, whether some had been incarcerated, whether some had been engaged in, criminal activity or self-destructive activity, transforming their lives. And the same is becoming true ever since we released OBAATAN, Afuraitkaitnit Womanhood, back in August. These two texts are foundational as well for our upcoming HAPI-MERIT retreat, training, cultural, and ritual retreat, which was taking place in February 16th through the 19th, that weekend, about 5 weeks away, on Edisto Island in South Carolina, one of the Gullah Islands. So we have that retreat. We also have the retreat information. We do have a couple of spaces left for late registration, as we said before, because of cancellation. So if you would like to attend, you can go to our HAPI-MERIT page. Those last couple of spaces are first come, first serve, of course, so whoever gets those is first come, first serve. So we'll have the workshops on OBARIMA, Afurakani Manhood, OBAATAN, Afuraitkaitnit Womanhood, and we'll also have other workshops as well dealing with training, cultural, and ritual at this retreat, building a strong foundation for Afurakani Manhood, Afuraitkaitnit Womanhood, which is the foundation for strong relationships, strong marriages, strong families, and grounded approach to AMANNE, Nationism, and of course, AMANSEM, nation building. So when you look in the OBAATAN book, now we have to date 29 books that we have published. OBAATAN is one of the more recent publications. Of course, we have more books coming out, and the ebook versions are all free downloads, and we also have the softcover versions available. You'll see with this particular book, since it's on Afuraitkaitnit Womanhood, you'll see on page 2, we say the wisdom of Afuraitkaitnit African women who carry the energy complexes of the various Obosom deities governing the 7-day week, and thus the 7 principal values of OBAATAN inform the 7 chapters of this book. These values are enshrined by the ancestresses of our great matron clans and transmitted to each woman. So when we show here the Ojira folk, Matan is a collective of women within Ojira, the purified nation, Afurakani people in the Western Hemisphere, and we list 14. Those 14 women is those individuals who informed the wisdom of each one of the chapters of the book. I simply wrote the book, scribed it, but the information with regards to the 7 principal values and how they are lived are coming from these 14 women. So this is what the book is about. The other books, the other 28 books I've written, and of course, influenced by the Nationism and, other people that we're in connection with and so forth. But this book in particular, since it's a book on womanhood, of course, I couldn't write a book on womanhood, so it's informed by these 14 women in particular who carry the energy of these different Obosom that govern the 7 days of the week, the female Obosom, and therefore those lessons and experience and so forth is enshrined within this text. Now you'll see the 7 principal values. We're not going to go through that tonight. We want to focus tonight specifically, if you go down to page 30, we want to showcase and talk about a specific divinity, Tanenet, which is, she's a force in nature, of course, a major force in nature. You could not be born into the world without her. She's central to creation. just like all of the Obosom are. But there's some deities, some Obosom, some Orisha, Vodou, and so forth, some Ntoro, so-called Neteru, Netetu, and so forth, that because the whites and their offspring don't focus too much on them, then our people following that path, we simply don't focus on them as well because the whites and their offspring decided not to focus on them. And that's not an approach that's normal or natural or sane. The forces in nature that govern all aspects of creation are the forces in nature, so we are in attunement with them. Of course, only black people are, only Afuraitkaitnit people are. So these divinities, when we engage in ritual practice and we communicate with our ancestresses and ancestors of our direct blood circles for guidance, when we communicate with the Obosom, the Orisha, the Vodou, the divinities for empowerment and replenishment of our energy complexes and so forth, and the guidance on how to utilize that energy in a harmonious manner. And, of course, the non-Nsamanfo spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors to show us how to utilize the energy we've been given, not only in a harmonious manner in general, but specifically as it relates to our clan affiliation and how our clan navigated our way through different aspects and regions of the Earth Mother based on certain dietary and social taboos and so forth that are woven within our clan structure and even our DNA. So they can show us how to utilize the energy of the forces in nature specific to our clan affiliation. So, but when we deal with the Obosom, deal with the non-Nsamanfo, the deities and ancestral spirits who are spiritually cultivated, those Obosom who know what aspects of creation that they govern, of course, and that we are seeking to learn about or we need to harmonize with, to bring some balance to ourselves, some aspects of ourselves and our activities. If we are unaware of that force in creation, they will show up, they will direct us to them so that we can learn more about them, so we can harmonize our activities with them, so we can recognize when they're operating in our lives and so forth and put it in proper context. So we don't sit around waiting for the whites and offspring to talk about deities. The Obosom will come forward and make us pay attention and make us seek them out because we're living off of their energy anyway. Tanenet is one of those divinities, and she is the matron Obosom, matron divinity of this OBAATAN, Afuraitkaitnit Womanhood process, as we'll see. And we talk about you hear about a patron deity of this and patron deity of that. Of course, patron is dealing with, fatherhood. Matron is dealing with motherhood. So when we talk about a patron deity, that's a male divinity. We always talk about the balance of male and female. So if it's a female divinity that's governing something, it's the matron divinity. Now, on page 30, it says Tanenet is a major Ntoro goddess, misnomer Nektert, but it's Ntoro, a major divinity goddess of motherhood and protection, childbirth, and rebirth, as depicted in Kemet. Tanenet is shown wearing a symbol of the Ata, the cow's uterus structure on her head. You see that in the picture on the left. She governs the cervix component of the uterus structure, which facilitates conception, protects the child during pregnancy, and facilitates delivery. The cervix also facilitates menstrual flow when wearing the crown of Mut, vulture, as you see in the picture on the top. Tanenet functions as the protectress of the family, and the great vulture is the protectress of the family. She facilitates the conception, protection, and delivery of a returning ancestral spirit into the womb to be born as a child. She also facilitates the quote-unquote birth of ancestral spirits into the world through the menstrual cycle. These ancestresses and ancestors become guardian spirits of morality for the child from birth through adulthood. We're talking about every time a woman has her cycle, either she's going to give birth to a child, she becomes pregnant and so forth, or if she doesn't become pregnant, sometimes when that ovum passes, she's giving birth to an ancestral spirit into the world as well as a protectress or protector of the family regarding morality and so forth. We're going to get into that. So these ancestresses and ancestors, as we said, become guardian spirits of morality for the child from birth through adulthood. Tanenet is thus the teacher of the young Afuraitkaitnit female who will grow up to be OBAATAN, woman, sovereign of herself, her function in creation, her morality, and her domain. Tanenet is also the wife of the Uterus, the deity, the male divinity, Manhood. He's the patron deity, Matron Obosom of OBARIMA, Afurakani Manhood. Then you have Tanenet, who's the Matron Obosom of Afuraitkaitnit Womanhood. And, of course, his picture as a deity is on the front cover of, the OBARIMA book, and her picture's on the front cover of the OBAATAN book. They're husband and wife. Now, first we're talking about, you see the uterus structure on the head of Tanenet. And she's also connected with beer and brewing and so forth, and we're going to show the connection to that. But first and foremost, she has the uterus structure on her head. They know she's a protector or motherhood, a divinity of motherhood and protection, childbirth and rebirth as depicted in Kemet. But the uterus structure, when they see the uterus structure, they say, oh, well, it's the uterus, so maybe she has something to do with childbirth. And they'll also see that there's a female divinity, Tanenet, and she also has the cow's uterus on her head, so she has something to do with childbirth, and she's manifested the bricks that the woman would sit on to give birth, and they'll say, well, maybe they're just two forms of one another. But when you look at Tanenet or the skin, that's the birthing skin that's around the child. It's called a caul and so forth, that amniotic sac that's still around the child. And sometimes the child is born with a caul or born with a veil, so to speak, and they're considered those who be seers, clairvoyant, and so forth. So Tanenet is dealing with that in the context of childbirth. That's that protective skin that protects the child during, gestation and so forth. And even when the child is born, sometimes that skin is shown as well. But so that's why she has the uterus structure on her head. And, of course, the cow, the great mother, manifests as Heru as well as Bat and, different female divinities. But Tanenet has that uterus structure on her head, but it's dealing specifically with a portion of the uterus. And this is what the white Egyptologists as well as the black chematologists don't have any knowledge of. As we said, since the whites and offspring don't deal with her very much at all, then our people don't as well. But she's a Matron Obosom, so we need to know who she is. So what is the cervix and how is it connected to her as a divinity of motherhood, childbirth, motherhood and protection, childbirth, and rebirth? So the cervix of the uterus is the tapered inferior region of the uterus, which is the lower region of the uterus. Its name, cervix, comes from the Latin word meaning neck, but it's, the cylindrical structure at the bottom of the uterus. It's called that due to its role as the narrow connection between the larger body of the uterus above the vagina below. So that's that neck portion that's leading to the vagina below. The cervix plays vital roles in the control of movement into and out of the uterus, protection of the fetus during pregnancy, and the delivery of the fetus during childbirth. This is where you get this notion of motherhood and protection and so forth. And the uterus structure on our head, but it's specifically dealing with the cervical structure. The cervix makes up the lower 1/3 of the uterus, and its tissues are continuous with the tissues that make up the rest of the uterus. And you can get this information, of course, from any, medical text or website, basic information about the cervix. Its outer covering is made of simple squamous epithelium known as the perimetrium. They go into some other detail about the structure of the lining and so forth. But the cervix can be broken down into several anatomically distinct regions: the cervical canal, the external OS, the internal OS, and so forth. But here's the key with regard to functioning, the functioning of the organ. And then this organ, of course, is a shrine for this divinity, and she executes that same function, facilitates that function physically, but also spiritually with the birth of a spirit into the spirit realm. The cervix of the uterus acts as the gatekeeper of the uterus by controlling when substances can pass into and out of the uterus. To assist in this role, the epithelial lining of the cervix produces thick cervical mucus that fills the cervical canal and forms a mucus plug blocking the flow of material between the uterus and the vagina. Around the time of ovulation, the consistency of the cervical mucus becomes much thinner, allowing the passage of sperm into the uterus for fertilization. During pregnancy, the cervix and its mucus plug protect the developing fetus by sealing the uterus from possible contamination by external pathogens. During menstruation, and this is the other key piece, one part is protecting the child, but then we also talk about menstruation. The smooth muscle tissue in the myometrium of the cervix dilates to allow the passage of menstrual flow and may cause sensations of pain and discomfort known as menstrual cramps, of course. The process of childbirth requires the cervix to dilate to around 10 centimeters in diameter in order to accommodate the head of the fetus as it passes into the birth canal. And, of course, that begins days prior to the formal start of labor. So the cervix is the gatekeeper of the uterus, controlling when substances can pass into and out of the uterus. She wears the uterus structure on her head. It's really pointing to the cervix and her functioning, where she's talking about motherhood and protection. The child is in the womb. It's being protected. The cervix is the gatekeeper, so it's protecting the child within the womb during that gestation process. She's a divinity of childbirth and rebirth. When they talk about delivery and so forth, it is the cervix that facilitates the delivery, but also the protection. The mucus plug there is protecting any substances from going up into the uterus while the child is gestating. But when it's time for delivery, the mucus plug, is released and so forth. The child is delivered and so forth. So she's dealing with motherhood and protection, childbirth and rebirth physiologically. Now, it also facilitates menstrual flow. And we also so when we talk about the difference between that protection aspect when the child is in the womb, and then, of course, delivery, but then when someone is not pregnant, the cervix facilitates menstrual flow. Now, on the spiritual side, we talked about allowing those spirits to come through. Ancestral spirits facilitating not just the birth of a physical child, but the facilitation of the birth of ancestral spirits into the world through the menstrual cycle. So Sechima Sekhmet governs the menstrual cycle. She, on one hand, releases blood through warfare, spills blood through warfare. But then that contractive force, she also spills blood through the menstrual cycle, which is called Asechima Inakan, the same name of the deity Sechima, Sechimet, or Sekhmet, and so forth. And that's why she's the goddess of menstruation in Chikametakana. But the facilitation of that menstrual flow, she works in concert with Tanenet. So facilitating the quote-unquote birth of ancestral spirits into the world through the menstrual cycle, these ancestresses and ancestors become guardian spirits of morality for the child from birth through adulthood. So whether you bring a child into the world, you are bringing an ancestor or ancestress back into the world. So when that spirit enters into the womb after, copulation and conception, conception takes place in the fallopian tubes. That is the sanctuary of Het Heru within that structure. She facilitates that union of the sperm and ovum, complementary opposites being fused together in an order of fusion, a harmonious fusion. And then implantation occurs, and now the child's in the womb, of the uterus, of course, and that's governed by Ajua Offset. And she's governing that process and that nurturing process, and child's being fed and so forth, and growing and developing is being protected by Tanenet. She's protecting any negative substances or pathogens from getting into the uterus through, that mucus plug and so forth. She's protected. But then eventually that ancestral spirit that's taking up residence in the womb will be birthed into the world, facilitated through Tanenet, and she helps with delivery. This is why they will show her in connection with delivery in the murals of ancient Kemet and so forth. That's an ancestral spirit that's going to live in the world as an Afurakani or Afuraitkaitnit human being. But with regard to the menstrual flow, you release an ovum. If it is not fertilized, of course, it's passed through. But those hundreds of thousands of ova within the female reproductive system, those are magnets, shrines for hundreds of thousands of ancestresses and ancestors. And some of those ancestresses and ancestors are drawn and are connected to the female. So when she passes an ovum, if it's fertilized, then one, or if they're twins or multiple births, one or more of those ancestors or ancestresses will be drawn into the world, into the womb to become physically born. But if it's not fertilized, sometimes out of about 400 cycles that a woman has throughout the course of her fertile period, from the time she, reaches puberty to the time of the childbirth or the menopause, there are about 400 or so cycles that the woman goes through, 400 chances for birth to occur, but that includes 400 chances for a spirit birth to occur. And on some of those occasions, some of those ancestresses and ancestors connected to those ova are brought through and drawn into the world, and they become guardians of morality, ancestors or ancestresses who are connected to the clan, guardians of morality, as well as guardians for the woman herself, as well as her children. After the childbirth or the menopause takes place, then the woman who birthed those ancestral spirits as ancestral guardians into the physical world, they're connected to the clan and, the home and so forth. The woman who birthed them has influence over them for direction, and as long as she's living in harmony with order, she has influence over the energy that they wield. And this is why some people will say once a woman reaches menopause, she's more likely to be influenced by, quote-unquote, Obayi in Akan or Ajay in Yoruba, talking about witchcraft. Now, in reality, yes, a woman who's, postmenopausal has the capacity to be more receptive to these spirits that she brought into the world, because she has literally an army of spirits that she has birthed. And she has influence with regard to them because they're part of the clan, and they came through her. Now, if she's a negative individual, she will seek to, on one hand, if she's a negative individual out of harmony, the kind of spirits that will come through are those kind of disharmonious, wayward kind of ancestral spirits who are not very spiritually grounded. If she's a spiritually grounded individual, she will be bringing those spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors who only seek to, influence the family members based on our moral foundations rooted in divine order. So, yes, she's more receptive to the spirit realm, but that does not mean she's necessarily engaged in negative, like Bayi Boro, which in Nakan means maleficent Bayi or maleficent higher psychic powers, misnomer maleficent witchcraft, or Bayi Papa, which is cool Bayi, meaning the beneficent, quote-unquote, higher psychic power usage, or so-called witchcraft. The term witchcraft is a European term that doesn't hold much substance with regard to definitions because they don't have the same experiences that our people do. The whites and offspring will call anybody a witch who can just communicate with a deceased relative. But that's nowhere close to what our people have the capacity to do. We can communicate with our deceased relatives, but we also have classes of ancestral spirits that the whites and offspring do not have, which are spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, which they don't have that, and they wield more power. And then, of course, we can communicate with the Obosom, the Orisha, the Vodou, and so forth. The whites and offspring cannot communicate with the forces of nature. So our capacity through the Bayi, that higher psychic power, to communicate not only with our deceased relatives, but also that class, the spiritually cultivated deceased relatives, as well as the class of being, the Obosom, the Orisha, the Vodou, that takes our practice of Bayi to a level that the whites and offspring do not have and do not possess and never will. So, when we're talking here about that facilitation of birth of those ancestral spirits as guardians into the world, and they protect the morality of the clan and so forth, Tanenet facilitates that. And because she facilitates that, she's one who is the teacher of the young Afuraitkaitnit female in this growth and development from young woman to fully formed adult woman. Teacher of the Afurakani female who will grow up to be OBAATAN, a woman sovereign of herself, her function in creation, her morality, and her domain. And this is where you see Tanenet with the headdress of the vulture, which is the great mother protective force, animating force with the great wings that protects the clan, protects the individual. So, but it's also a sign of sovereignty. You see the queen mothers wearing the vulture as a headdress, not just the vulture near the forehead, like, moot, and then the cobra with moot nekabet, and the cobra moot wachet, but the vulture as a headdress in and of itself, representing the headdress of the queen mother. That's talking about sovereignty. It's not only sovereignty with regard to this is the queen who's the ruler of the nation, but it's also sovereignty when you have that spiritual moot or that spiritual vulture on your head, then you're a sovereign of yourself. You're regulating your thoughts, intentions, and actions. You're regulating your emotions. You're regulating the different aspects of your spiritual anatomy. So the energy you receive from your Abusi Abosom, your Matron Obosom, the energy you receive from your Ejabosom or your Patriclan Abosom, the energy you receive from the deity that governs your head. That confluence of those three in unison create a unique energy complex that you operate through. You wield that as a sovereign when you have that moot vulture crown, that spiritual crown on your head. You are sovereign of your own behavior, sovereign of your activities, sovereign of yourself, sovereign of your functioning creation, sovereign of your own morality, of your domain. And your first domain is yourself within your womb, because, ancestral spirits come back through your womb, and that's the first seat of government is the womb and so forth, and later becomes the lap of the woman when the child is breastfeeding. And you become sovereign of that domain and sovereign of your home and so forth, and then sovereign of your clan and so forth. And some people elevate the sovereign of the nation as an Ohema, queen mother, and so forth. So those are the two different headdresses. The uterus, the cow's uterus, showing it has to do with the cervix, and then the vulture headdress dealing with royalty, sovereignty, administering the affairs of state in a harmonious fashion, governed by the great mother divinities of your matriclan and so forth, your matriclan ancestresses and ancestors on a social level, but on an individual level, the sovereign of yourself, sovereign of the different aspects of your spiritual anatomy. So as we're working to execute our functions in creation, rearing children at the same time, bringing them up in their function until they, reach the age where they can strike out on their own and, execute their function themselves, engage with one another, other groups of people, our people, of course, who are engaged in the same harmonious process. This is central to nation building. And when you look at the term Tanenet, if you look at the way it's written in the Medusa in ancient Kemet, the T sound is written with the tethered rope. It also can be, the T sound can also be a Ch sound, like a TJ, Ch, or T, depending on the dialect. You find that same T or Ch sound change in Akan. So you'll find the T sound can also be pronounced T. So, for example, Fanti, the Fanti Akan people, we hear some pronounce it Fanti, and it sounds like a Ch sound, the T or the TJ sound. So in ancient Kemet, when you look at the Medusa, that tethered rope symbol, Medut, hieroglyphic symbol, is the T sound, or sometimes the Ch sound, and so forth. In certain instances, it can be the K sound as well. So you see that. Then you see the wavy lines of energy for the N sound, the wave energy sound, which is born of Nun and Nonet, the male or female forces of the root energy of being, the primordial energy. That's the substance of all energy in creation. So you have that, and you also have the two plants, the two sedge plants of the south, the southern plants. Those two sedge plants, the roots, it's talking about rooted energy. The N sound is the root, And those two plants are talking about the roots in the south, which is the first land, foremost land, land of the beginning, the front land, that is ancient Kanat, that is Nubia and so forth. This is where we get our bearings from the south. That's why it's called the front land, the face land, the head land, and so forth. They even show the, south, the medut or hieroglyph of the head of an individual, talking about this is the head land. North is not the front, north is not the head, north is the back, the end, south is the front. So you see those plants of the south, those rooted plants, the sedge plants, the root plants from the south, from the first, the foremost, from the beginning. And then you see the energy of the N sound for Tanenet, and you see Tanenet of the tethered rope. A tethered rope is something that you tether or bind with. And, of course, that's dealing with the cervix. It is that portion like a rope that ties or binds and protects and keeps, negative pathogens from coming up through the cervix into the uterus, protecting the child while it's there. So it ties or binds the child up into the uterus while the child is developing. And then that tethered rope is released or loosened so that the cervix can dilate and the child can be born and so forth. So you have that first tethered portion of the name Tanenet, the T sound, and then you have those root plants, and then they're rooted in the energy, the primordial energy of being. So when you see Tanenet, when you look at pre-creation, the black substance of space is called Ka and Kaet, the black formless substance. That's a divine substance. It's dark energy and dark matter, as it's called by the whites and offspring now, but we call dark energy the male deity Ka, and dark matter the female divinity Kaet. They have the capacity to take any shape or any form and so forth. All the planets, suns, moons, stars, and so forth all exist within that black substance and are nourished by that black substance. But prior to the planet, sun, moon, and stars existing, AMANNE and AMANNE first gave birth to Ka and Kaet, the primordial black substance that has the capacity to take any form, any shape, that becomes the consciousness of AMANNE and AMANNE. Later on, it becomes the black substance within our bodies, within which all of our organs and systems are floating. That's the melanin content within our bodies, just like you have melanin in your skin externally. Internally, you have melanin within your various organs in the brain, in the blood, and so forth. The organs are sitting in that black substance, just like the planets are floating in that black substance of space and so forth. So you have that black substance is the consciousness of AMANNE and AMANNE, and they cause heat or expansion, air, expansion and contraction to move within that black substance. They give birth to the divinities Hehu and Hehut, the expansion and contraction, expansive and contractive force within the black substance. Hehu and Hehut begin to expand and contract and cause the black substance to begin to vibrate. Eventually that black substance is vibrating and it gives birth to waves of energy. Those waves of energy are Nun and Nunet, the male and female force of primordial root energy. And eventually Nun and Nunet are vibrating together, and their vibrations become so rapid that they give birth to a spiraling energy, which is the expansion and explosion of Ra and Ra'et, who explode out of the black substance and manifest as the first fire and light within creation. And they begin to spiral through creation, carving out black spheres. Penetrating those black spheres would become the first stars, which become illuminated and so forth. But that primordial energy subsisting within the black substance, that primordial energy of Nun and Nunet, or Nanet, that eventually gives birth to Ra and Ra'et, the creator and creatress, that primordial energy that undergirds all things in creation. That black substance, there's a primordial energy that's subsisting there, just like when you're at rest and your eyes are closed and you see nothing but darkness, you have an energy that's humming within you. You can expand and contract, begin to breathe heavy and start becoming aroused and moving and acting and generating a great deal of fire, expanding and contracting, Hehu and Hehut, and you can arouse some fire within you to the point where you start sweating and so forth, moving, acting, engaged in fiery activity. You can generate that kind of fire, or you can generate that by, quote-unquote, fire breathing and so forth. You can cause that black substance to begin to vibrate, that energy begins to move, then it becomes very rapid, and then fire is generated within you. It's like giving birth to Ra and Riot, your life force energy within you. But you have that primordial energy subsisting in the blackness that has the capacity to take any energetic form. It is the root energy of being. In the same fashion, the baby inside the womb, which is being protected and contained by the cervix, which is Tanenet. You see that baby within the womb is subsisting within a watery substance in darkness and so forth, in a primordial state, in a primordial energetic substance. Eventually it grows and develops, the child grows and develops, and will burst through, just like Ra and Riot burst out of the black substance and manifests as the first fire and light. But when you look at the name Tanenet, it includes the tethered rope, which is the points directly to her function. When they use Medusa or hieroglyphs to show what the names of the divinities are, they're directly related to the functioning of the deity. So that tethered rope is that binding force of Tanenet, of the cervix, which allows the protection for the child and so forth, and secures the child within the uterus and so forth. That's the touch sound, the concretizing sound and so forth. Then you have the root plants and the energy, the Medusa, the hieroglyph, that is that root energy of being. So there's an entity dwelling within the primordial water and so forth, and there's a root energy of being that's within that water as well, and it's all contained by that rope. That's Tanenet. That's what she deals with. That's as it's spelled out in Ancient Kemet. Then when you look in the Akan language, if you look at the root term, Tan or Time, it has a couple of different meanings, which is important. Time means a net in which fruits are carried, and then you have things such as a network, wire netting, a trellis, a grate, a lattice, and so forth. And then Unton Time is like a spider's net or web and so forth. But of time, the root of Tanenet, that is a net, something that carries or captures or holds and so forth what you need, fruits and things like that. That is that cervix, that net that captures and makes sure that the child is secure in the womb, but also protects against pathogens, external pathogens, from entering the womb while the child is gestating. Time also is also the term for a parent of children. So the time is the net structure that holds the entity in place. The time also is a descriptive of parent, because the parent, motherhood as well as fatherhood, protection and so forth. When you look at Oba, that's the term for female or term for woman. Just like OBARIMA is the term for male, man. Oba, OBAA, Oba is the term for woman. Or we talk about Oba time. That's the kind of woman, Oba, who has now become a time, a parent. Now you've stepped fully into womanhood. Someone can reach, the age of 21 or 22, 23, and even up to 28 when the body is fully formed externally around the time they're 21. By the time you reach 28, around that time on average, that's when your brain internally is fully formed, fully developed. And we talked about that in a previous broadcast, the different paring down or pruning process of the synapses and so forth is not complete until the person reaches around his 28th year. That's when the full brain development is done. So someone can reach that level of development and they become Oba, a woman. But once you move into Oba time, a woman who gives birth, a woman who becomes a mother, now you're a fully functioning woman, because you have utilized your structure, that womb structure, to bring one of the ancestresses or ancestors back into the world, and you facilitated their birth into the world. You facilitated that cycle. You've come full circle. You came into the world, of course, facilitated that delivery through Tanenet. You came into the world, you grew and developed and so forth. connected with your complementary opposite, your divine complement, your husband. You fuse together, copulation, conception. Then you bring another ancestor or ancestors into the world so you can perpetuate this clan. Now you step into that fullness of womanhood. You are OBAATAN. You're a woman who has given birth and, has children and so forth. So this is why we utilize the terminology OBAATAN for, Afuraitkaitnit Womanhood. And it's directly related in the Akan language. Of course, you see that net, that structure that is the same as the tethered rope that binds and holds the child in the cervix and so forth. Etymologically, cosmologically, it's all tied into the ritual function of Tanenet. And when we go through these 7 principal values of OBAATAN, connected to the 7 days of the week and the female Obosom that govern the 7 days of the week, Tanenet pulls all those 7 different values together in her function. The same is true with regard to the 7 principal values of OBARIMA, manhood. Main 2 pulls those 7 different values together with regard to the development of the Afurakani man. So, because we can do that, because we have that information codified with not only within these books, but just within the culture, that's the foundation for, number 1, strong manhood and womanhood. You have strong men and women who are morally grounded. That facilitates strong marriages. When you have strong marriages, then you draw the kind of ancestresses and ancestors back who are spiritually cultivated. You give them an environment to develop within, or even if you draw some back that are not that spiritually cultivated, you facilitate their growth and development harmoniously because you're creating a strong, morally grounded environment for them to develop within. And when you're bringing ancestresses and ancestors back who are being reared in an environment that's governed by an Afurakani man and Afuraitkaitnit woman who share the same values, then you're engaged in the first critical process and phase of the AMANSEM nation-building process. Because going forward that any institutions you build, whether it's military, educational, agricultural, dealing with medicine, engineering, building homes and so forth, textiles, establishing sound systems of governance and jurisprudence and so forth, all the 7 principal values of AMANSEM nation building, from the root, from the gate, that the cornerstones of all those things that you will build will be solid because you've already built solid people. When you build solid people, then you can build solid institutions. If the people are not solid or grounded or weak and they don't have a foundation, then you build the institutions on a slippery slope. So this is the relationship between Tanenet, OBAATAN, Afuraitkaitnit Womanhood, and AMANSEM, Nationism, purification of nationalism. And of course, as we said earlier, we're going to go into in the retreat. We'll be having these workshops in detail, going into this information in detail, so people will be able to facilitate the same workshops themselves when they're working with youth or working with adults or just connecting with people in their everyday lives. They'll be able to transmit this information of Afurakani manhood, Afuraitkaitnit womanhood. Of course, the books are free downloads, so any of our people anywhere can get that information for free. Even our people are not involved in culture and they're kind of wary about, something African-centered or Afrocentric and so forth. But when the information is free, then they don't feel any pressure. And when they also see that there's no recruitment going on, they're just free to get the information and study it at their own, pace and so forth without any pressure, then they're more open and receptive to being, informed. And then they study the information. They realize, of course, that it's accurate and it's necessary, it's vital, and they begin to incorporate these things in every aspect of their lives. And this is what's been happening since we first released the OBARIMA Afurakani Manhood book back in 2008. Thousands of brothers, young and old, have been transformed by that text, transformed their lives by that text. Utilize those 7 principal values every single day, a principal value to align your thoughts, intentions, and actions with, in connection with the other principal values as well, but being focused on the energy complex of the day and manifesting that harmoniously. It leads to people changing their lifestyles, getting rid of self-destructive behaviors, connecting with other individuals, including their wives and so forth, future wives, so they can build strong families and so forth. This is what has been done over the past, 9 years with OBARIMA. And once we release OBAATAN, Afurakani Womanhood in August has begun to take shape as well. We've had at least over 1,000 downloads of OBAATAN, Afuraitkaitnit Womanhood, since we released the text. So it's getting out there, and now when we have these dual workshops at the retreat, we'll be able to institutionalize this process and move it even further. So, okay, on the phone line, if you have any questions or comments on the phone line, hit the number 1. If you have any questions or comments in the chat room, you can post those. If you need to log in as a user in order to interact, you can do that as well. For the AMANSEM broadcast, we normally have the AMANSEM broadcast as a 1-hour broadcast, so we've gone over the information we wanted to go over. So if you have any questions, just let us know. If not, we do just want to let people know, those who are signed up for the retreat, if you signed up for the installment section, we are at that point where the installment is due. Those who would like to sign up for the retreat, you will see when you go on the page that we have an installment payment plan for the fee. For those also who are thinking about coming, but they were looking at the lodging issue, some people have come together and rented out a beach house, and they're all paying a smaller portion so that they can cut expenses dramatically with regard to that. For those who would like to attend the retreat and lodging was an issue, there is a possibility you can do the same thing at another beach house, get some of the people together and share the beach house for Saturday and Sunday, and cut your expenses by 50% or 75% with regard to lodging. So you can send us an email about that if you have interest in that. But that's the key. That's coming up February. Now, also, February is that event 4 weeks later, or actually 5 weeks later. In March is our 3rd annual Echi-Sign Afuraitkaitnit African Ancestral Religious Reversion Conference here in Washington, D.C. It's an all-day conference. We've recently updated our page with more information on the conference. Of course, we'll be presenting on the Hoodoo tradition. Voodoo Queen Kalinda Laveau out of New Orleans will be presenting on the Voodoo tradition as maintained in the blood circles of our people in North America. Prior to the Haitian migration into Louisiana, Voodoo was already in Louisiana, carried in the blood circles of our people who were forced into this hemisphere, so we've maintained that intergenerationally in our culture. We'll be talking about the Akan tradition. We have a couple more presenters we're going to post very soon. So we have a couple of things going on with that. We have vending spaces. We only have, right now, we only have 10 spaces. So if you would like to vend, of course, it's first come, first serve. We provide 1 6-foot table and 2 chairs. So the vending fee is $30. If you would like to vend, go to the Echi-Sign page as soon as possible. Those we don't set aside vending spaces, or and so for people to say, hey, can you just set one aside for me? You have to let us know, pay the fee and so forth, because we have done that in the past where we set aside some tables. We only had 12 spaces total. So, and now we have 10 spaces. We set aside spaces, and then by the time it was time for the conference, right before the conference, people had to cancel. So then we had empty tables there because we set aside some space when people hadn't actually taken the space. So we can't do that now. If you would like a space, then they are first come, first serve. Go to the page. There are 10 spaces right now. Go to the Echi-Sign page and, fill out the vending registration form and make the $30 payment. It's an all-day event. Also, even if you didn't want to vend, if you would like to place your business, your organization, or your institution in our journal, the Echi-Sign journal, we need to receive your JPEG files. Of course, it's in color. You can send it in color, or it's black and white. It's up to you. We need to receive those as soon as possible. You can send those to the kwesiakan@gmail.com email address. But we need to receive those as soon as possible because we have to start formatting the journal. We publish the journal ahead of time. It's released on the day of the conference. We give away a free copy to everyone who comes to the conference. Then, of course, we sell the softcover version on the website. But the key with this journal, which is different from other books that people have out, is that we have the ebook version of our journal online from now on permanently. So over the past 12 months, we've received over 2.7 million hits on our website. We have about 4,000 of our ebooks downloaded, free ebooks downloaded per month. That includes the Etchy Sign Journal Volume 1, Etchy Sign Journal Volume 2, and then this will be Etchy Sign Journal Volume 3. So when people are downloading those books every month for free, they'll also be seeing your ad for free as well from now on permanently. So a quarter-page ad is $25, a half-page ad is $35, full-page ad, which is full color, it's a magazine size, 8.5 by 11, that's $50 for a full page. So from this point on, anybody who goes to the website to download the book for free, they'll see your business. So one $25 or $50 investment will allow you to have advertisement on the site from now on because we keep the books there permanently. We're at 2.7 million hits over the past 12 months. We're already on pace to eclipse that, this 12 months from September to September. So we're constantly, growing, getting more views. So this is part of the Egua marketplace strategy. Starving the beast, feeding the pride, showcasing Afurakani businesses, organizations, and institutions. We have our conferences. We have a number of different presenters presenting on different aspects of the tradition, hoodoo, juju, vodun, wanga, and different traditions born in the blood circles of our people in North America, those that have been maintained in the blood circle of our people in North America. We're not grabbing people from Nigeria and Ghana and the Caribbean and so forth and going to different people's shrine houses and saying, hey, can you come out and talk about ancestral religion? We're talking about our ancestral religious practices that we maintained in our blood circles over the past 300 years here. Those are the traditions, the expressions of Akan and Yoruba and so forth that's manifested in North America. We have practitioners from those traditions. That's the difference with our conference than everybody else's. So we're facilitating that. People come out. The conference is always free. All of our conferences and presentations are free. They get a chance to come to a free conference. They get a free book, but then they also shop with the vendors. So we're facilitating that, Egua marketplace piece there. But then we also have the journal. People read the journal, but then all of the businesses in the journal as well. So we're constantly promoting Afurakani businesses, organizations, and institutions. So if you go to the Etchy Sign page, I'll put that link in the chat room as well. We need to get those. We need to get those JPEG files of your business, your ad for your business, whether it's a book or organization or a study group or whatever it is. Or even if you want to just take out an ad to support the work that we are doing, you can do that as well. We also have, while I'm speaking on that, I'll put this link in the chat room as well. We also have, this year, the first time that we've started a crowdfund event for the conferences. Before, of course, we just covered the expenses ourselves, but as they're growing, the events are free. We want to help cover the travel expense of the speakers who are coming from out of state to present at the free conference and so forth. So if you would like to, you have the option of receiving one or more of our books in return for your contribution, your donation to our fundraising campaign, crowdfunding campaign for the conference, Etchy Sign Conference. So you will see that on our page, on the Etchy Sign page, the Ancestral Religious Reversion page on the website. You can make a contribution if you'd like to receive some books in return for that. You can do that as well. We've had a couple of people so far. In fact, let's see. We have a couple of people so far who have contributed to the Etchy Sign Conference crowdfund. And again, that helps us to cover the cost for the venue, which is an increased cost. Okay, so yeah, so far we've had 4 people contribute to the crowdfunding effort for the conference. That helps us to cover the cost of the venue, but also the travel expense for people from coming out of state, flying in from out of state, because unlike some of the other conferences who charge $100 or charge this or charge that for admission for people to come listen to the speakers, ours is free, so we don't generate those funds up front to cover, travel expenses. So this is the first time we're having a crowd fund for that. So if you do support the work that we are doing, seeing it different from what other groups have been doing or organizations have been doing, and you see the value in it, show your support by supporting the crowd fund effort for the conference or placing an ad in a journal, because that'll benefit your business as well. But this is a way to assist our piece. So far, for the Etchy crowdfunding page, we've had 4 contributors. We put it up a few months ago. It's been up for 85 days right now. So we've had 4 contributors over the past 85 days. So we definitely have more people. We know we have more people because we have 4,000 people downloading the books on a monthly basis. So if you support the work, you value the work, as we said with our other broadcasts, they're talking about Black Panther and it's already sold out, and our black people just waiting to, give up this money to the white millionaires who, created the series, and the black millionaires who are going to be, starring in the movie. You have thousands of our people just sitting, waiting with their money to just give it away for a tale of fictional superheroes. Of course, we're promoting our film, our documentary film, which is in production, which is talking about our real super heroes who actually assisted and directed our freedom from enslavement through the practice of hoodoo and juju and voodoo and waging war against the whites and their offspring. We need to start supporting real documentation, real films, real books, real conferences, as opposed to spending all of our money with the whites and their offspring, our enemies, and those black people who will simply, as millionaires, turn around and take that money and spend it right back in the white community. So we have one call on the phone line. We're going to take that call, and then we'll be done. Michelle on the phone line, number 0217. You had a question or comment?
Good night, Brother Tracy. In your broadcast, you mentioned that ancestors are brought into the world via a woman's cycle, not necessarily through the live children she gives birth to. Are you referring to like stillbirths and miscarriages, or the egg shed through the menstrual cycle?
No. So in this context, outside of the regular birth, we're talking about in the book when it says spirit birth, so to speak, birthing these spirits into the world, we're talking about someone just has a regular cycle. And in this culture, people just have a cycle and that's it. In traditional cultures, there's a ritual associated with, the cycle every month. And people do things differently. Different groups do things differently with regard to the disposal of the menstrual blood and so forth. Some people connect in a certain area where all of the women who are menstruating connect at that particular time, engage in ritual practice. But so it's different for different people. But here, people just, they have the cycle and that's it. In our culture, sometimes that ovum passing through is also drawing one of the ancestors or ancestresses through as well, and that spirit is, prominently around the woman from that point on. So in a very strong way, because those ova in the womb are magnets for ancestresses and ancestors. So that's what we're talking about.
Okay. Well, that made me think, how would that woman come to know who those ancestors are? How do those ancestors make themselves known to the person through which they came through? And, like in what forms are they, like, physically, available around? I'm not sure if I'm using the right way to
right. No, so they make themselves they make themselves known, but part of the mechanics of it is one of the reasons why you have these. Some people will just say, I feel, an ancestral spirit around me, or I saw this female spirit, or I saw this male spirit, I know it's an ancestor or ancestress, I feel them around me. We're talking about the mechanics of how that happens. And the mechanics of it is the ovum within the female, just like the sperm cells of the male, are magnets for these spirits. They're shrines for these different spirits. That's why they are in the orbit of a woman, and at some point, some of them are drawn in to the extent that when the person is saying, I've been feeling this spirit heavily around me when I'm in the home and so forth, in this culture, people just say that and that's it. When we practice ancestral religion, we don't just have that feeling. We, establish an ancestral shrine and begin communication and engage in ritual practice and make ourselves more receptive, whether we can see them or hear them or feel them or whatever it is, so we can actually, work
whether or not they belong to us.
Say that again.
Discern whether or not they belong to us, to our group, like clan or whatever.
Right. Now, the ones you draw in will be, ones who are connected to your clan. Now, then you also have people who are, kind of receptive but not necessarily grounded, and they can walk around outside or they're around other people and they're very receptive, and some, discarnate spirit who's hanging around other people will try to attach themselves or follow the person or connect themselves to the person and harass the person. So some people are feeling that. But, of course, once again, when we engage in ritual practice, we do become grounded and we can repel those kinds of negative, discarnate, unrelated spirits with ease, just like you can repel when your immunity is up and operating at a normal level. You can repel all kinds of negative bacteria without effort, with ease. It's only when you become compromised physically that, certain viruses can get in and cause you to, have the flu and all these other different things.
Given that many, the times that you have, even when you're not, quote unquote, like receptive, like clairvoyant, and but the times that you're having dreams, a lot of those times they're not people that are familiar to you, in the sense that you don't have a sense that you've met them before. So is it possible that when you're having dreams that these are the people that you're meeting?
Yeah, sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not. So it depends on what you've been doing, who you've been interacting with. Sometimes dreams are communicating. Sometimes it's other individuals communicating. Sometimes it's neither. Sometimes it's, things that have been suppressed and you're, bringing back up spiritually to, learn about some things or things that have been bothering you and so forth, or things that you need to learn. But when it is a communication from ancestral spirits, sometimes it is our own people and sometimes it's not. But even dreams become more sharp and more focused the more we engage in ritual practice throughout the course of our lives. Then when we're in the dream state, which is a major way that the Unsamaf will communicate with us, the dreams become more vivid and more focused and more, direct, as opposed to just all over the place with, without context. You can begin to contextualize what's happening.
This is very interesting. This is the first time I've, really, heard of the menstrual cycle being a magnet for, an ancestral spirit. And you said that this is described in detail more in the Womanhood book that was just published?
Well, as far as the menstrual cycle piece, we described that. There's a series of articles on our website. And even if you just Google this, Sekhmet, menstruation goddess, a number of years ago we did like a little short 3-part series on that. And if you just Google Sekhmet, menstruation goddess, you'll see that series of articles on our website. It says Sekhmet, Obosom, meaning menstruation goddess in parentheses. And in one of them, I think it's either part 2 or part 3. I think it's part 3 is when we talk about the menstrual cycle and the drawing of ancestral spirits back and menopause and things like that.
Okay. Thanks a lot for answering my questions. Merci.
Okay. We appreciate the call. Okay. All right. So that was the only call we had on the phone line. So we're going to end the broadcast here. But, well, first of all, Yerase for tuning into the broadcast. Yerase for sharing the information, broadcast. We're going to have a special broadcast coming up next week because by Benada Tuesday, we have a broadcast on Monday on Joda for Akanko Nanason by Benada Tuesday. That'll be our 300th broadcast, so that'll be a special broadcast. So be looking out for that. But, again, if you would like to vend, those are first come, first serve. Go to the Etchy Science site. If you would like to place your business, organization, or institution in the journal, we need to get those JPEG files in as soon as possible. If you're not going to be vending, if you're just going to attend the conference, you'll see all the information on the site. That'll continuously be updated. But once again, for the two different pieces, if you support the work that we are doing, please contribute to whether it's the Achisign Conference crowdfund site or the documentary film crowdfund that we have, Omado Kapo Adebisa Adjumani, African American Ancestral Divination Project. So either one of those is fine. We're doing a number of different things at the same time. We have the conference coming up. We have the retreat coming up next month, the conference in March, and we're also trying to get the film completed before, the spring. So, and we can do that with the assistance of the community. We've had a few people contribute over the past couple of days when they heard us talking about it on the website. Very often people, hear about it on the broadcast and forget to go to the site, and then, weeks go by and they say, oh, man, I'm meant to, contribute. So before you forget, please go to the site now, whether it's the documentary site, crowdfund, or the Etchy Sign crowdfund. Any contribution is welcome. We appreciate that, Yerase. Yerase to everyone who has contributed so far. So this is the last broadcast for this week. Yerase, we thank you for tuning into the broadcast. And Yebeshe Abio, we will meet again. It's up.